Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it is time for the Q&As. I'm going to keep it down a little bit. We have guests over who are sleeping, so I'm going to try not to talk too loud for you guys. And as I said last week, I'm having to split these up into two parts until this whole legal situation's over with the copyright thing, so I can go back to longer videos so they can't go over 15 minutes. Standard format, I'm going to do, I think, around 8 questions or so, 8 or 9 normal questions. I'm going to have 2 PED related questions and a private question. The PED related ones, guys, I'm toning down the nature of those a little bit. It's just too much of a hassle with YouTube and all the trolls flagging them for drug talk. It's just not worth fighting with YouTube back and forth over them each time it happens, because the last few weeks people have done that. And then I have to fight with YouTube to get, it's just not worth it, because there's enough in there that YouTube will get their attention, and then I have to kind of debate with them a little bit and get them to recheck it. So it's just not worth it beyond a certain threshold. And then the last question is going to be, again, very much related to some of my political views. It's going to be very, very American in nature, but I will link some other material in it that will hopefully help some of the people maybe who don't understand, because it's one of the biggest questions I get. They don't understand the cultural diversity and some of the viewpoints we have in America on certain things. But let's jump into this. First question. Lat pullovers are very popular in old school bodybuilding, and some say they're the upper body squats because of the loading pattern. Really, I've always heard that for dips, not for pullovers. However, they're rarely done inside the gym these days, as they are as effective as portrayed, or opposed to the lat pull downs, which everyone and their mothers seem to do. Why aren't they done as much anymore? They aren't done as much because they're simply more difficult to do, a little harder to set up. A lat pull down is easy to walk over and just hang and do. Are they a good exercise? Yeah, they're a very good exercise. They're not an amazing exercise. They're not going to work your entire upper body, but what they do is that they do let you work your lats and engage your lats. Maybe not as much as some of the strict pulling movements do, but they do work it through a different range of motion, through a different movement pattern. So that makes them a useful exercise. I admit I do them on occasion, once every couple of weeks myself these days. However, what they do is change the focus. So if, for example, you've been doing pulling motions and then your biceps and brachialis and all that are fatigued, they can be done to add some extra stimulation to your back behind it. So because it takes all of the load off the biceps and everything, and it puts more of it on the tricep, the long head of the tricep. They're also, a decent exercise for that. And then they work your core differently. They're really good for your intercostals and everything if you stretch deep enough. Now, the issue that you run into with this exercise, the pullover, is loading. It's very difficult to load it correctly because a lot of people use dumbbells and it's hard to do that correctly. You might want to find a way to do them with an easy curl bar or an Olympic bar off of the edge of a bench, something where you can hook your feet in to help you with it, so you can really stretch, and you could do them that way and it will help. But they are just overall a difficult exercise to set up and execute correctly with progressive overload due to just, the awkward nature of the exercise. So that makes it a little more difficult to do. But they're a perfectly good exercise, and for many people, I think they have a valid place in your routine and training. I'm not going to knock it. I occasionally do them myself. All right, next question. Would you see benefits from a vitamin or mineral supplement if you weren't deficient? I supplemented once with zinc in the past, 22 milligrams every other day, and saw certain improvements like stronger nails, bigger erections, etc. Does it mean I was deficient? It might mean you were deficient. The issue is that it comes to individual vitamins. You have a healthy range, and sometimes deficiency means you're just below the normal range, but the healthy range could actually be 3 times the minimum still, go up to. The problem is that vitamins, maybe. You need to research each one and find out which vitamins are toxic or not when you take too much and weigh that out. But if you're on a balanced diet with plenty of whole foods, most of you are very, very physically active. You wouldn't be on this channel if you don't lift weights and maybe do some cardio and other activities. So most of you are going to be consuming more food than the normal person. Most of you are consuming more whole foods than the normal person. The likelihood that you're deficient in anything other than maybe vitamin D due to lack of sunlight is going to be very, very rare. Zinc, for example, is a supplement I do not recommend that you take. You might have gotten a placebo effect because zinc supplements shouldn't affect your nails. Something else changed, or you just thought they were. Your erections could have been a host of factors. If you were truly zinc deficient, you might have seen a small drop in testosterone, but it's not something that you would notice overnight. You're talking about taking it for months before you would see an improvement there. It's not something that's going to happen in the first week. So things like zinc, though, metals in general, you need to be very, very careful when you supplement metals in your diet. I'm going to recommend that you don't supplement any metal into your diet, like iron, zinc, anything like that, until you consult a medical doctor first and get some blood work done to make sure you need it. Because the problem you run into is not just overdose. I mean, people will say, well, it takes a lot of zinc to get toxic. And that is very true. Most of you aren't going to supplement enough for toxicity, but if you're consuming a high mineral diet, you're eating a lot of whole food, you're eating 2,500, 3,000 calories or more, which is what most of you active guys are going to be consuming, you're probably taking the upper thresholds of the healthy amount of zinc in already in your diet. By adding a zinc supplement, you could be taking so much that you don't necessarily reach toxicity, but you reach a point to where copper absorption becomes a problem, and then you develop a copper deficiency. And that's one of the issues with supplementing metals, is not just toxicity, but certain metals, when you get too much of them in your diet, can block your body's ability to absorb and utilize other metals that they need for various metabolic and health functions. So in the case of zinc, it happens to be copper. So you could develop a copper deficiency, which could harm your health. It could harm your recovery. It could actually be detrimental to your overall health and even fitness and performance. So a zinc supplement in the long term could be detrimental to you. So you need to be careful of these things. Don't start supplementing metals of any type into your diet until you consult a physician first, or at least a registered dietitian, and you're going to have to pay money for this. But it's worth it in the long run. Don't just arbitrarily supplement metals in. I do not ever recommend that you do that. It's dangerous and stupid. All right, next question. Used to be doing quite well in your program. It got me benching over what was recommended for your 5x5 beginner program. Let's not talk about squats or deads. I have long femurs. That is a cop-out, brother. I do not buy that line of argument, particularly on the deadlift. Long femurs has never prevented anyone from deadlifting 600 or 700 pounds. All right. Question is, I only have time to come to the gym twice a week. Would this be enough to grow or even maintain muscle while cutting, or do you recommend something different? Thanks. If you can only get to the gym twice a week on cutting, man, your calories are going to have to go pretty low. That's going to suck. However, can you maintain all of your strength and size while only running, say, my program twice a week instead of 3 times, even running the cutting version? Probably, as long as you're consuming enough protein. Your calorie deficit isn't too big and you're not losing weight too fast. I think it's totally reasonable for you to hold on to all of your gains while doing that. Perfectly reasonable. But again, I want to stress the point that your long femurs are not an excuse to have a low squat or deadlift. It means you need to adjust your style on your squat to find the style of squat that gives you better leverages. Maybe, but it's not going to prevent you from squatting heavy or reaching my numbers that I recommend on the program. I think you've been maybe shortchanging yourself on these lifts a little bit. But the twice a week is fine for cutting, which is going to lead me into my next question here, because this kind of segues into it nicely. So next question. Hey Jason, love your training philosophy and the programs you put out. Just wondering if you could help me with the training programming based on my situation. Right now I have a demanding job that requires a lot of time away from the gym and can only spare 2 days out of the week, the weekend, for training. Ideally, I want my training frequency to be my core lifts 3 times a week. However, because I'm reduced to 2, is there any guidelines you would suggest to make up for the 3rd day? Would you bias your training more towards high-intensity workouts or focus on training volume, and how would you go about progression? I'd love to hear your opinion on this. Many thanks. This is going to be tough because you have 2 days a week to get in and train due to your work. What I would recommend, because they're back-to-back, it's going to suck. You're going to go 5 days without training. What I'm going to recommend is going to be full body both days. Obviously, you can't run something like my novice program because it's too intensive. So what I'm going to recommend, so that you train slightly different energy systems and it doesn't hurt your progression as much, I'm going to recommend that your Saturday, you come in and do a full body for metabolic fatigue, higher reps, like something in the 8 to 12 rep range for all your exercises. Come in and pick one good exercise per body part, maybe an extra one for your lagging stuff or your lagging strength department, but you don't worry about the strength component of it so much on Saturday. Get it and do your metabolic, and then you're going to be recovering from that. It is going to affect your peak strength a little bit, but not so much that you can't still lift with high intensities. And then what I would recommend is that Sunday you come in, less volume, focus on higher intensity, heavy weight, focus on your heavy strength training, your power work, things like that. Yes, you're going to be slightly fatigued from the metabolic work, but it's not going to affect you as much on your max strength the next day as if you did maximum strength work and then tried to do metabolic fatigue the next day. Just my opinion. I mean, you could always switch them around and see which one works better for you because different people are going to respond differently. But that would be my general advice for someone who can only get in Saturday and Sunday. I'm going to recommend, rather than you try to periodize your training around, you just do concurrent type training and try to make any gains that you possibly can. You'll actually make gains doing that if you're smart about it and you train correctly with all of that and your diet's on point, you'll still make gains doing this, but it's not going to be an ideal situation, as you've probably figured out. But no reason you can't actually make progress. All right, next question. Hey bro, lately I've been feeling horrible the day after I have a high sugar day. Like say if I ate too much chocolate and the likes, the next day I feel almost hungover and lethargic. Why is this? Cheers, Jason. A lot of it has to do with the surges in insulin and things going on in your body that you're not used to from all the sugar. It could be a heavy feeling. Your GI tract could be a little disrupted from foods you're not used to eating, some of the additives and things in all these processed foods. But more importantly, what you're seeing, the reason you're so lethargic from the high sugar load, is the melatonin production. When you consume any large amount of carbohydrates in one period of time, one sitting, and this would be exacerbated by faster absorbing ones like tons of processed sugar, your body produces more melatonin as a response, which is your sleep hormone. It makes you sleepy, makes you tired. Normally it's stimulated purely when you get in a completely dark environment, your melatonin kicks up. But carbs can actually cause this to happen too. It's one of the reasons I tell guys who follow, fairly high carb diets or who eat more carbs as I do a low carb diet, is that a useful tool for you before bed, contrary to the old adage, save a lot of your carbohydrates for bedtime if you're having recovery issues and sleep issues, because they'll make you sleepy. They'll help you sleep if you consume them before bed. But it's the shift in melatonin production that's causing you to feel so lethargic. That's going to be the biggest factor involved in addition to those other things. All right, next question. Jason, what is your opinion on strong lifts 5x5 for a 6-month novice who wants to improve strength and endurance, sprint speed for football, soccer, or anything other than strength endurance sports like rugby, American football? Also, I think in season at the moment, keep up the content, thanks. I don't recommend for field athletes strong lift 5x5. It's not the most balanced program. It's a stripped down version of some of the older bodybuilding 5x5s, which is why my 5x5 re-added a lot of stuff back in. It's not the most balanced program for a field athlete. Starting Strength by Mark Ripto is actually specifically written for novices in your situation. It's been used by tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of high school field athletes. It is a very successful program for that. We could argue that it's not ideal all day long, but in your situation, it is a much better choice for what you're trying to do. It's a lot more balanced for what you're trying to do, and it's going to help you a little more out on the playing field. So rather than strong lifts 5x5, I'm going to generally recommend to a novice field athlete that you go with strong lifts, which is a 3x5 type program. And the book is readily available everywhere. All right, next question. Hey Jason, I was wondering if holding more muscle makes one's body more prone to being hotter. It seems like whenever I'm doing with other friends, I get hotter more easily than they do, and when they are cold, I'm typically comfortable. Yeah, it's for a number of reasons. The muscle itself generates heat. You expend calories generating heat with more muscle mass. That's the actual reason people with a little more muscle have a little higher metabolic rate, their resting metabolic rate. Your muscle tissue is metabolically active. It is burning through calories and releasing it as heat. Also, because you train and you're very physically active, you're going to have more blood flow, more capillary beds, more circulation, and again, the higher metabolic rate, you're going to generate and release more heat. So you're going to warm up a lot easier than other people who are more sedentary. So yes, absolutely, it's a twofold reason, not just your muscle mass, it's your overall circulation and metabolism, but the muscle mass contributes to it massively. So it's a two-part answer. But yes, it absolutely will happen for most people. It should be noticeable. And unless those people have a really high metabolic rate due to thyroid or something going on, then you're generally going to warm up faster than those people, especially if they're sedentary.